June 12th, 1994, 2 lives snuffed out in savage violence. June 17th, 1994, the world stopped in its tracks to watch a surreal scene in Southern California.
Millions of Americans from across the country were glued to their television screen.
This is AC. I have OJ in the car. I'm coming up the freeway.
Free OJ! Free OJ! Free OJ!
Who would have known that on June 11th, on a Saturday night when you went to bed, the next day would change your life forever? This is chaos, right? Everybody's talking about it around the world. Do they think I'm involved in this somehow?
You're right with that, but I think part of it was thinking about my relationship also was close to the kids. That was this most sickening feeling. They don't have a mom anymore.
It was getting difficult, and you could just sense that it was not going to be easy. June 12th, 1994, 2 lives snuffed out in savage violence. June 17th, 1994, the world stopped in its tracks to watch a surreal scene in Southern California, the slow speed Bronco chase. A former NFL football legend and his best buddy taking cops, LA sheriffs, on a 2-hour ride that no one will ever forget. It's the 31st anniversary of the O.J. Simpson murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman and the epic Bronco chase, and we are covering it all for you today. Welcome, everybody. This is a epic episode you tuned into today. I'm Tom Zenner. This is the Tom Zenner Scandal YouTube channel, and this is 1 Degree of Scandalous with my co-host, Kato Kaelin. Do you remember this story? What were you doing back then? Do you remember any parts of what I just set up there?
I do.
June 12th, June 17th?
Everything you mentioned, I remembered. And the people in my life that I remember. Yeah.
This guy's life changed, obviously, forever. We have the best O.J. Simpson saga coverage, bar none. You can go in our archive or just watch this episode 5 or 6 times today, because we are going to bring you everything from the key witnesses, the key figures, all the characters that were there, and we're going to tell you the whole story. Buckle up, get comfortable, enjoy this show.
Yeah.
So we do have the best coverage, Kato, but do you remember that day? Anything happened? Other than the murders, the slow sleep Bronco chase, OJ becoming a suspect, true crime, reality TV starting. Was the day kind of normal up until 7 o'clock that night?
Well, Tom, it's kind of normal. What's your definition of normal? For me, I'm sort of crazy, but it's one of those things of anything can happen in an instant in your life. And you know what? So many scenes I remember from you bringing about the Bronco chase and everything, of having people over the overpasses more peacefully protesting. As you know, it's been kind of rough here, coming here to this, Yeah,
we're in our 3rd riot since we've been in LA.
Right. California is actually burning. Parts of West Hollywood are still flaming.
Here we go. And we're off and running, baby.
I had to do that.
I don't know if that could ever be extinguished, but, hey, man, let's let the Marines and the National Guard do their job out here and
That's right.
Stop Antifa and all the other benefits that come along with it. Okay. This is going to be epic, right?
Yeah.
Because last year we started this on the 30-year anniversary of the crime. This is the 31st year anniversary of the crime, the 30-year anniversary of the verdict and the trial. So we've had all the key guests throughout the past year, or maybe 15 months. And that's who you're going to be hearing from today. So what do you say? We started from June 12th?
Yeah, why don't we go to this? Because when the knocking on my famous guest house door, which I can't find, my...
Were you looking for this? Were you looking for this, Kato Kaelin?
You still have the guest house key.
This is the guest house key to Kato Kaelin's bungalow. This is it right here. It still exists. This thing could go in a museum or something. Tell the story about Larry King trying to buy that from you.
Well, actually, I was doing the Larry King show, and Larry, I said, what it was like living in the guest house. I said, Larry, do you know what? I still have the key. I want to give it to you. And he turned it down. Wow. Larry turned down the guest house key. I think he probably has a better place to stay. He has his own guest house at the late Larry King, who we'll have pictures later. But What a ride though, Tom, right? With everything, you and I actually went to the Rockingham house. The key wouldn't work there because we know that it's been torn down and put up completely, and knew just that there's no guest house. Yeah. And by the way, I found out there's no pool, just tennis courts.
Who would have known that on June 11th, on a Saturday night when you went to bed, the next day would change your life forever? So why don't we start on June 12th, 1994. It's a night really that altered the history of news, crime, So many things evolved from that. The Kardashians, I mean, you name it, Kato Kaelin sprung on the world. The media descended into Brentwood. Everybody knew where Brentwood was, and this thing became a national obsession. Now, Kato, one of the guests that we had that I thought did such a great job of describing who Nicole was, your friend, Nicole Brown Simpson, who you met in Aspen, was Keith Zlomsowitch.
Mm-hmm.
And backstory on Keith, he was the operations manager for Mezzaluna, so he oversaw all of them, right? He spent a lot of time in Aspen and a lot of time in the one, I think he said in Beverly Hills or maybe West Hollywood, but the one in Brentwood is where, that's where the restaurant was where Ron Goldman.
Yeah, Tom, I think in Beverly Hills is actually where he confronted OJ at one time. But the Mezzaluna is in Brentwood is where he had the relationship of his friendship with Nicole because they would come in there and it was basically walking distance for Nicole.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, and I want Kato to give his thoughts on this too, but we really wanted Keith for our big 3-part saga that we did last summer. And I somehow got a hold of him, and he's living in the Bahamas, and he's not living in Nassau. He's living on a remote island where he bad cell service, and somehow he agreed to do it. He wanted to come on the show with me and Kato, and he never does interviews. And Kato, that hour we talked to him was one of the most powerful hours I think we've ever done.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, and Keith said to us, he goes, "Guys, I'm on an island. It's going to probably break in service." It didn't break at one time, and that's why it was so compelling. We were in the moment the entire time, and it was great hearing Keith's story. A lot of it I didn't even know. I didn't know his relationship with her was really strong. I mean, they could have been possibly getting married at one point in their life. And if you go back in the archives and watch it, but Keith was a phenomenal guest and a really, really great person.
He would have been kind of the opposite of OJ, right? He didn't need the lights. He didn't need the fame. He didn't need, all the attention. Hardworking, very successful, would have been proud of Nicole, I think, to blossom how she was.
Right.
Be proud of her looking beautiful, looking hot in a dress or whatever. The exact opposite of OJ. And who knows, because he really did love her, and he was a friend to her first. Yeah. So I think he really cared for her.
Yeah, I think so. Keith, basically, I think that breaks down, Keith did not want to own her, OJ did. Keith saw that Nicole was her own person. Mm-hmm. That was it.
Well said. And like you mentioned, Kato, he brought out some stuff I didn't know. We asked him about what it was like at the funeral. What was it like in the buildup? Maybe, and remember, Keith is the guy that OJ was F-bombing on that voicemail, right? When he knew Keith was with Nicole, and Nicole called 911, and it wasn't voicemail, but it was the tape recording at 911. So, what do you say? Let's go back and bring in some of Keith. So we're gonna share with you some of the emotional just reactions that Keith had about the relationship building up, and just wait till you hear from Keith Zlomsowitch right now.
I believe when I met her in Aspen, she had just left OJ. I want to say within a week of leaving him, she had come to Aspen. And then when I got to LA, she had the house, she had the kids, she had her freedom. And she was, for the first time since she was 18 years old, she was out from under his thumb.
Exactly.
At least she felt like it. So I got all the fun. I mean, we were, lunch every day at Toscana, dinners out at every new restaurant that opened in LA I was invited to. We were there. We were at comedy clubs. We were at, the Roxbury dancing. We were doing all the fun stuff because she could. She could. Kato, you came along. I met you, Kato. I don't know if you remember this, but the night you met Nicole and Faye, I want to say it was New Year's Eve of '92. Is that correct?
No, 93 with Grant Kramer. That was my first time.
Was it 92 into 93 or 93 into 94?
93 into 94.
No, I think it was 92 into 93, wasn't it?
I got to go back because I lived there six and a half months and 6 at OJ's. So
yeah, so you knew her over a year, and she died in June of '94.
So it became 93 then.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I had a huge party at Mezzaluna in Aspen every year on New Year's Eve. It was very exclusive, and Nick wanted to come. And I said, I knew she had Faye with her, and I said, hey, do me a favor, just come right after midnight. I'm going to be busy. Because Nick and I, that whole year of '92, she'd been to Aspen 4 or 5 times to visit me. We looked at houses together. She was going to buy a house in Aspen for the kids. We looked at schools. We looked at, what the kids would do while they were there. Realtors showed us a couple of different houses, and then she found out OJ wouldn't let her take the kids out of Los Angeles County at the time. So anyway, so that New Year's Eve, I told Nick, I said, come over just after midnight, after I do my thing here, blah, blah, blah. And you guys all came over together. I want to say you were at the Ritz or something when you guys met, or somewhere, Ritz-Carlton or one of those places. But
yeah, it was in a ballroom type thing, a big party.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
I think it was the Ritz-Carlton. And I knew Grant from Mezzaluna in Beverly Hills, but not well. And when she showed up, I recognized Grant.
I mean, I'll tell you what, Kato, I can still feel the raw emotion from his words, and you could just sense how much he cared about her. He's a great storyteller. He's very articulate, but it was all coming from the heart, man. That's powerful.
I think Keith is compassionate and sincerity, and you can just sense this is a good guy.
Anyway, when we did this epic saga last summer, a lot of moving parts, right? I was in Scottsdale. I flew out to Scottsdale, rented this beautiful state-of-the-art studio. And I was kind of like the master of ceremonies in front of this huge green screen. We had Kato and then all these other guests that we had to align and get to call in, Zoom in, Riverside in at the exact precise moment. And they're all busy. And one of them was Jim Moret, who everybody's going to know and recognize. And I know he's a longtime friend of yours.
Yeah, I'll tell you something about Jim Moret. Did you know that Jim Moret's father was James Darren, the famous singer, actor? I mean,
he may have. He probably mentioned that. I was mesmerized by that fact when he told me us. And then I forgot.
That blew me away. And I'll tell you the great thing. Jim contacted me through a PR that I had a public relations and wanted to do a segment on bowling. And I said, well, Jim Moret does CNN's entertainment. And I said, entertainment? I said, this is not trial related. I said, it's going to be great. But it was related because we went bowling, but we talked OJ.
Yeah.
But Jim gave me that chance, and to this day, we're still friends from that little bowling segment. And that's I think Jim's so good on this episode. And
Well, let me ask you a question about that bowling show.
Yeah.
Was that when he was at CNN?
CNN.
I mean, when they actually had fun like that, and it wasn't a political operative?
Exactly.
Yeah.
CNN. That's when they had Larry King and Jim Moret. So I had a relationship with CNN. I went down to the studios, I would say realistically, at least 60 times. 60.
The one on Sunset.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they have a bureau there. He's on Inside Edition now, one of the stars there.
Yeah,
and then CNN, prior to that. And this made him really a household name because he had a didn't he have a law degree or something? I think he had a law degree. He wasn't a lawyer, but he had a law degree. And that's why CNN said, hey, you have a law degree, you'll understand this talk during the trial. You're on the anchor desk. And he never left. Yeah. Right? He was there for months and months and months, hours and hours every day.
He's got a great look too.
Yeah.
He's got that look. Jim Moret is
and
a good looking
smooth.
guy.
You don't want to sensationalize any of that stuff. You just want to process the information.
I'm going to add to smooth, trusting. And if you're trusting, then you've got it. You're
right.
And I think that's Jim's whole thing. He's very trustworthy.
Yeah. And then he was great on that show, wasn't he?
Jim was great. But Tom, I got to tell you, something that'll blow everybody away is the coincidence. The coincidence that happened with Jim Moret and what ties him. It's sort of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This is the 1 degree of O.J. Simpson and Jim Moret. And it gave me, the hair stood up on my arms, and it was the most incredible coincidence that you can imagine.
Let's roll it.
I was thinking, it was so strange because we were all observers at this point. We didn't know what was to come. We didn't know about the trial. We didn't know about the spectacle, about the stories and so forth. But I had thought back, the last time that I'd seen OJ in person was 5 days earlier, the day just prior to the murders, because our daughters were in the same dance school. So I saw OJ Simpson, I saw Nicole at the recital where our daughters were performing that day. And I remember OJ was always people couldn't help but come up to him. Hey, Juice, how you doing? OJ, how you doing? He'd often be giving out tickets, trying to sell more tickets to the recital. They sat separately that day. I didn't really think anything of it, but we know now that there was some friction about whether he was going to go out to dinner with them that night, whether he was going to be with them. She was bugged with him about something. And to think back on that and having witnessed it in person, it was, and then to see it play out and then to watch all of this unfold with this chase and then to see him finally get out of the car and surrender himself. It was the strangest 5 days, really. And it was just still the beginning of the most bizarre trip we were all about to take.
Cato, I don't know about you, Cato. Okay, I don't know about you, but I need a minute to process that. I had no idea. That is unbelievable. That's a blockbuster. I cannot believe that your kids were at the same dance recital.
Yeah, it's a strange story. I told Larry King this story once, and I said to him offhandedly, I said, you know, I have size 12 Bruno Magli shoes because I loved those shoes at that time. And I was a guest on his show, and he said, Marsha Clark, we have another suspect. And I said, Larry, why did you say that? I'm anchoring the coverage. He says, great show.
That is the Jim. Boy, these are great these are amazing stories.
Yeah. Cato, I almost think you undersold that about the hair on your arm. I mean, just hearing that. What are the odds? Yeah. His daughter was at the same dance recital as Sydney. He saw OJ that day.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's amazing, and just the whole tie-in.
Yeah,
how we're connected to that, Jim, and then OJ and me, and it's like, wow.
Cato, there's only a handful of people that saw OJ Simpson on June 12th, 1994. You are one of them. Mm-hmm. And Jim Moret is one of them. And that thing, when he didn't even tell us beforehand, he sprung it on that show, and it was incredible. Okay, there was another character that unfortunately didn't become a household name. He should have. In your opinion, in my opinion, in Tom Lange's opinion, in probably everybody except maybe Marsha Clark's opinion. I mean, this is a joke that this guy was not on the witness stand for multiple days in 1995. His name is Skip Junis. And Cato, you had heard about him before, or you knew about this guy. Now, he was talking about the bag that OJ took from the house. You were there as it was transferred into the limo with Alan Park. So, and then if you want to give your interpretation of Skip and his appearance.
Well, what I think, Tom, I didn't. I just was going to grab a bag that was 20 yards away from where the limo was, and OJ said, "Don't get that. I'll get that." I never actually even saw OJ go and pick it up and put it in there, which of course he did. Because I went back to the limo and was with Alan Park just watching it. So OJ obviously picked up the bag. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm sure he did. So that bag, and I described it sort of as a college backpack with the thing kids would put over their shoulders.
Knapsack or something.
Yeah, like that. And that was the thing that was never found. And the most interesting thing is Skip's story. Skip was an ad agency. His wife worked at American Airlines. He picks her up nightly, and she's in charge of celebrity, walking them so no one bothers celebrities going to on their flights. And his story is so believable because he's trustworthy also. Yeah. He's got that. I saw OJ put his, as you know, he'll tell the story. And him not being called a witness, no sense at all. You want people to be credible. He is so credible.
I mean, why would he lie? I mean, he's an ad executive. He worked for Time Warner, so he sold advertisements for Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, Time Magazine. Yeah. Back then, they had huge expense accounts. They'd fly around the country, meet with clients. So his wife, like Cato said, worked for American. He's at the airport. They pull up to the gate at American, Terminal 4, whatever it is at LAX. And at the same time, Alan Park comes in with the limo, and Skip is right there, and he sees OJ exit the limo, and we'll let Skip tell you what happened next.
Well, at the scene where the limo and where I were parked, right there is the podium for the sky caps. Yeah. So when I first saw him get out of the limo, they were unloading his Louis Vuitton luggage out of the trunk, but he was carrying. The best way I can describe it is a cheap gym bag. And I recognize that kind of bag because I used to have one when I was an athlete, carrying shoes and clothes and stuff like that to a game or something.
Sure.
And I watched him walk over. He wouldn't let the sky cap or the limo driver touch the bag. They both offered, and he said, "No, I've got it." He held on to it. And while they were messing with the luggage, he went over to the trash can, which is a tall trash can with a lid on it, with a hole where you stuff trash into it. And he put this bag on top of the trash can. And then what was really peculiar is that he didn't unzip it all the way. He only zipped it just part way at the bottom, just enough to get his hand inside and pull stuff out, and then immediately put it in the trash can. And he had positioned himself so he was between the sky cap and the limo driver and the trash can. So they really couldn't see what he was doing. I was at a more of an advantageous angle to watch with this. And, it wasn't like I was watching every movie made, but watching this, it caught my eye because it was very, very peculiar behavior.
Incredible that he was not used as a witness. And Kato, one thing I remember about one of the appearances of Skip, his dog the phone was ringing the whole time. He says that no one ever calls me and the phone was ringing the whole time.
Lots of ad sales.
But that guy could have been credibility. He could have said, he could have added. So how do you refute that? I saw OJ get out and this is what he did.
Yeah, it's like they said, we don't need him. We got enough stuff. That's what it feels like. And mistake, though.
Okay, talk about worlds colliding. As Skip Junis was watching that, it was Alan Park's limo that OJ Simpson got out of at LAX. Kato and Alan Park were at Rockingham at the time. OJ gets in, down to the airport. And nobody gets Alan Park for interviews. We have twice. Yeah. And Alan is amazing. He lives in Sacramento. He works for, he's a train conductor. He's done well with his life. He's a great guy, just like everybody knew he was when they watched him testify.
He's hopped on the K train also, because I'm telling you something about Alan Park. Alan Park, as you're going to find out, Alan Park, the great thing is, hits his first drive and he's picking up a celebrity in the limo. So you know that if you're picking up a celebrity, you're going to make sure everything goes exactly right. And you're aware of the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think Alan was also so very valuable in this. He was aware of everything because he's going to make sure that nothing screws up on his part.
Yep. And the backstory with Alan is the owner of the limo company was supposed to drive OJ to the airport. Calls Alan. Alan is doing it. And then the owner of the limo company was able to do it then, and Alan was halfway to Rockingham. He said, well, I'll just take it from here. Imagine if he didn't do that, right? So the limo eventually would get inspected. They'd find it, and Alan actually helped LAPD do that. But Alan is so trustworthy, so believable, so compelling. There's no way you wouldn't believe him. He did a great job on the stand, but hearing it in person from Alan Park describing driving O.J. Simpson to the airport, there's nothing like it. Take a listen. Okay. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and man, he came across in the trial as the most believable person, just the most humble person that just stuck to the facts. Of course, that's limo driver Alan Park. And Alan, great to see you. And man, your story, because your memory is so good, and then everything you did that night was documented by pings on towers, right? Because you were making calls. You were the limo driver, and I think it's really interesting to note that you had just started that job. It's not like you've been doing this for several years. So talk about how that night started for you, where you ended up picking up O.J. Simpson to take him to LAX.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And it started off with me working for the company, which was a neighbor of mine. He saw me driving another limousine just part-time, and he asked if I wanted to do a little part-time work for him. And knowing that he had a contract with NBC and drove some very well-known people, I was like, yeah, sure, I'd definitely be into that. And so I started to work for him, and it had only been about 3 months since I started with the company. I had driven some other famous and well-known people before that, and I wasn't a very starstruck person. And so that night that I was getting lined up to drive OJ was kind of a special night for me. I was looking forward to it because I was a big sports enthusiast, a big NFL fan, and kind of watched him growing up playing football and all the movies and Hertz commercials and all that stuff. So I thought it was going to be pretty cool to drive this guy. The owner of the company, Dale St. John, usually had his select few celebrities that he would drive himself, OJ being one of them. And I know that he'd been driving OJ for about 7 years. But that night he could not pick him up and take him to the airport. So like I said, it was looking forward to it. And even when I was just getting ready to leave the house, because I hadn't been up in that area up at Brentwood, this is the time before GPS and satellite. We were still using an old map book. So I left early, and we literally lived like 30 seconds, maybe a minute from the 405 freeway. So I left just a little bit early so I could get up there and just be on time and make sure I found the place. And my boss called me as I was on the on-ramp to the 405 freeway heading to Brentwood. And he just said, "Where you at?" And I said, "I'm just getting on the freeway." And he said, "Okay, I just got home early. I was going to go ahead and, take the run." So I was that close to not even this happening to me, which trust me, I would have been fine with.
I'm sure you thought about that a lot, man. Your life would be totally different. I mean, just we're talking about a matter of seconds. Real quickly, OJ had an 11:45 flight out of LAX to go to Chicago to play in a Hertz Golf celebrity event in Chicago the next day. Real quickly, what time were you supposed to pick him up? What was the assignment?
The actual pickup time was 10:45. We're usually there 5 minutes early. So 10:40, I was going to be there, and I actually arrived about 20 minutes early. I was there about 10:25.
Yep. Okay, now, Alan, back to you, because, you mentioned that, you live right off the 405. You could have easily, if the call from your boss had come a couple minutes earlier, you wouldn't be going to pick up OJ, but you were. But it wasn't a routine pickup, right? There was all these delays. You knew his flight was at 11:45. You're probably thinking at one point, is he actually going to make it? You're desperately trying to reach him, calling him, et cetera. So when you got there, about what time it was, and when did the action start picking up?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I arrived at the Rockingham property at 10:25, and I don't know if anyone's seen photos of the Rockingham property. He lived on a corner, and it was a corner of Rockingham and Ashford. So when I arrived, I came up the Rockingham street looking for the addresses written on the curb. I see an address there. And as we know later, that's ended up where the Bronco would have been parked that next morning. But when I drove up, I could see the address on the curb, and I'm looking right at the front of his house, and there is no Bronco sitting in front of his house at that time. I made a right-hand turn onto Ashford, made a U-turn, and came up the opposite side of the street on Ashford and parked the limo kind of close to the corner. I smoked cigarettes at the time, and I got out of the car and I sat on the curb of the sidewalk there. And as I'm sitting on the curb, I can see directly into his property from the Ashford gate. So I'm looking in there, and I can see basically right towards his front door. Never at any time did I see any motion, any people walking back to any car. I mean, it was looked like no one was actually home. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I get back in the car. It's getting to be about 10:40. I drive back onto the Rockingham street. I look through the gate again, and I can see there's still no Bronco on the street right there. I can see straight up to where his garage is. And I think that just the way that the angle of the driveway was, that I wasn't going to maneuver the limo through there as well as from the Ashford side. So at that point, I backed straight up, went up to the gate on the Ashford side, and that's when I started to ring the call box that goes into the house there, from obviously is what Kato was hearing me trying to call in to get inside the property. He never answers. I let it ring for quite a bit. And at that point, I paged my boss, got back out of the car, rang the intercom again. Still no answer. I got back in the car. At that point, my mom happened to be staying at my house down there in Torrance, and I called her to get my boss's phone number. So I was going in and out of the car several times, making phone calls, which we know now are on, we're a big, part of the timeline, because they were able to establish that through the phone records.
Yep.
And I just, since I'm such on a time frame and pickups and drop offs and all that stuff, I was looking at my watch continuously. So I knew every time that I made these phone calls. So last time I get out, I ring, no one answers the phone inside the limousine rings, which ends up being my boss, Dale St. John. I pick up the phone, and that's when I do say, I don't think he's there or anybody's there. And I say, hey, Dale, I don't think it was meant to drive this guy. He doesn't seem like he's here. No one's answering the phone. And that's when he said, well, is there a light on here? And started to point to things around the house that he may sit in here and whatnot. I said, it's dark. It doesn't look like there's anybody here. As I'm talking to him, that's when I see the dark figure come from kind of towards the garage area, which is over towards the Rockingham side, which would have came out from behind Kato's bungalows back there. I saw him come through the drive, this dark figure dressed in all black, and described them as about 6 foot, 200 pounds, and not running, but moving very, very quickly towards the front door.
Yeah. And Kato, we're sitting here on June 12th, 2024, exactly 30 years ago to the date is when you met Alan for the first time. By the way, you both look great. You should see all the comments from when you've been on the shows before. You guys haven't aged. You look great. But Kato, this next part of the story is so pivotal and so dramatic because it involves part of OJ's luggage. He was going there to play golf, so he had his golf bag. He had another bag, but he had a third bag, a duffel bag. You and Alan were both very much involved in the transport or lack of this bag. So let's talk about it. You get outside, Alan's there, ready to pick up OJ. Luckily he didn't bail. He's still there. And tell us about this duffel bag that OJ was taking out. And
I'll tell you, Tom, that Alan just describing that, I honestly, I'm getting goosebumps because of the way you present yourself and tell the story. And Alan, a question that I have, and I'll get into that, Tom. Alan, when you saw the figure, I think there was luggage already at the door, correct?
Yeah, but I couldn't see it at that point. That was the two bigger duffel bags, but I couldn't see anything at that point, just other than him going in quickly and. After he went in is then when I saw you, basically as that person went in, not even 10 seconds, whatever the time was, it was a really, really short time, is when you came out from behind the house there.
Okay, and I came out from by the Ashford where I saw you at the gate coming in through the guest area.
And this
way.
This is after, and I guess we should say, on that last call, when I saw the dark figure go in, OJ did pick up at that point, and he sounded in like he was in a big hurry, and he just said, "Hey, man, sorry, I overslept. I just got out of the shower. I'll be down in a minute."
So, like you said, believable. Alan is fantastic, and I'll tell you how important of a witness he is. He was helicoptered in from Catalina Island. You don't think that they want this guy as a witness to make sure? Marshall Clark made sure, we'll get you a helicopter, we'll get you here. Yep. So that shows you how important they really wanted Alan Park.
I forgot that, but now that you said that, he was working, he was on Catalina Island helping with the fireworks on July 4th. Right. He said, I can't leave the island. And it was the grand jury testimony they wanted to appear at, I think, like July 5th. If you want me, you got to fly in and get me. So they bring a helicopter and fly him right to downtown LA. And that was epic. That was unbelievable. Okay, another guest that we've had multiple times, including on our big saga last summer, was another person that did not testify, which is a joke. And we love her. She's great. We believe her. This happened. It's Jill Shively. She was prominent in the Netflix documentary, and she was the person driving to try to get a salad before the store closed.
Right on San Vicente, Jill's driving her car, and someone with the lights off ran the red light, and she reported it as a drunk driver. And the wherewithal of Jill to write down the license plate number and immediately hear the voice. And the day before she watched Naked Gun, she knew it was O.J. Simpson.
Incredible.
I'm telling you, all these things, Tom, that we have are people. It's like a Hollywood script. Throw that out. That's not believable. Yeah, it's all true.
I know. It's epic. And this is like within minutes of the murders. Within minutes, their paths collide. And Jill's story is incredible. You go back to some of our old episodes and watch, but here's some from Jill that describes the encounter with OJ just literally minutes after the murder.
Okay, so as I'm approaching Bundy, a car's heading north up Bundy, lights off, almost hits my car. I pull to the right. I remember there was like a school there, and this car, the white Bronco, just misses me and kind of goes up on the center median there, like I think the left front tire. He's blocked. He can't go through Bundy up north any further because there's a gray, I remember a gray Nissan in his way. So for brief second of time, there's me, the white Bronco, and then the gray Nissan, and it's just frozen in time. And then all of a sudden, the guy in the Bronco is looking at me like I had done something to him, like I was in his way. And so he looked at me. I looked at him. I knew I thought it was a football player. I wasn't sure who it was at first. So then he yells, move to get out of the way for the gray Nissan. And then because he kind of stuck his head out, and I recognized the voice as O.J. Simpson at that time.
Yeah.
So he's yelling at the driver to move. They're going back and forth trying to get out of each other's way. And I remember the third time he backed up, he was able to take off north on Bundy. And at that time, I remember catching his license plate number, 3CWZ788. I remember that number. I thought he was a drunk driver because he had his lights off, almost ran into me. I was a single parent. I was really angry because then he had kind of an attitude like I had done something to him. I almost like it was my fault. Yeah. Like, so it really angered me.
It's just really truly mesmerizing to hear the firsthand account of things that happened literally seconds, a few minutes after the murders at Bundy. Now, Kato, imagine if that was a full-on collision and police get there and they inspect his Bronco. If it was AC's Bronco, his Bronco, I mean, he would have been caught with evidence on him. It would have been lights out, case closed before he would have had to take a plea if they offered it to him.
I'm gonna disagree because I think OJ would have talked himself out of it, saying, "Here's my number. I got to catch a flight. I'll take care of this with the insurance." I think that's what he would have done.
Probably.
We'll never know but the scenario that you just gave would be mind-boggling of what do you do. But I think that's the kind of guy he would probably and the cops would have sent us a celebrity maybe and said, go catch your flight. Because nobody knows what happened at that moment.
The only thing I would say is if the car was undrivable, the Bronco was undrivable, and he had to leave it at the scene.
Oh, yes.
Then he would have been screwed, right?
Exactly.
He would have been screwed for sure. Anyway.
Wow.
And they didn't use her.
They didn't use her because she got a payment from hard copy. You wanted the show. I think it's hard copy. And then who cares? Her testimony is so important. She's there minutes at the exact time that the murders probably happened. Yeah. Jill sees the car and reports it. It's a 911 call. It's just mind-boggling.
It's all timeline, too. She was there when it happened. They could have put some of the pieces together. All right. One person who thought Jill Shively definitely should have been testifying in that trial is the legendary LAPD detective Tom Lange.
We love Tom.
Tom is the OG. He's a star. We love Tom. And, of course, he was a big part of our saga. And let's hear from Tom talking about kind of the moments when he was alerted about what happened and what he and his partners did next.
Well, what's going through his mind, as well as any other killer, is probably just, wants to get the hell out of there. Obviously, you don't want to be caught with the bodies. And when you talk about timelines, this might be important to bring this in really quick. We obviously, the timeline in this case is extremely important, and these folks that are here today are part of that. But there was one other, a man walking a couple of dogs that he did every night right by Bundy in the alley across the street. And he believes that this was about 10:35 when he heard a commotion coming from the Bundy house. The timeline, again, here is important because for all the obvious reasons. So what we did a couple of months after the murders on a Sunday evening, about 10:30, we went out to the Bundy location with a black and white police unit. And we went from between the murder scene on Bundy to the Rockingham home. We wanted to see about how long it would take to get from Bundy to Rockingham. As the crow flies, it's just about 2 miles. But when you're on the streets, going through stop signs and everything else, traffic lights, obviously the time will be a little off. So we wanted to do this. We did it 3 ways. We did it by following all the traffic rules of the road, stopping for stop signs completely, driving through waiting for green lights, signaling our turns, and we drove just normally from Bundy to Rockingham. Then we did it in a bit of a hurry in an unmarked car, similar to what Jill is describing here, Simpson driving a little recklessly, a little quickly, popped a couple of stop signs, and a little more of a hurry to get up there. Then we got into a black and white, did it code 3, red lights and siren, from Bundy to Rockingham. During those 3 trips we made, at no time did it take anywhere near 4 minutes. Never there, 4 minutes. So there's a lot that happened in a very few minutes here that people don't realize. And all of these folks here fit into that timeline. That's why it was so important that they testify to that timeline. This is the beginning of all this stuff. Yeah. And of course, this goes to Jill, importantly, why she wasn't used. But that's, I think you're going to be getting into that a little bit.
It's amazing. His stories are just amazing. That's why we've had him as a guest so many times. I'm going to tell you, Tom, that we haven't spoke about this, but I'll never forget the moments and the times, at least 2 or 3 times, riding with Tom Lange and Phil Venetter. I'm in the back. It's that feeling of I'm in the detective's car with the detectives in front of me. I think people are probably passing us on the freeway are thinking, is that a criminal in the back? Because you can tell by their car. It's one of those cars you go, well, those are detectives. Unmarked car.
It's those sedans, those 4-door sedans.
Exact. And I'm in the back of it. And then they knew my whole aura of who I was, and they start opening up about certain things about the crime.
Let me ask you, when you're riding in that car, did it almost feel like you were in a TV show? Because those guys are from central casting as far as
100%
as a cop and a detective.
100%. And the thing that made it so fantastic for me is that I could feel that they were including me in as part of, they're not trying to sway my testimony. They're just human beings, and they're telling me stories of their life, and it was the best. It was really I think that's the day I found out Tom was from Milwaukee.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
nobody knew
fact,
that
yeah.
either. All right, in the hours after the murders, the lawyers were circling, the detectives were scrambling, and the media was all over this thing nonstop. Lives instantly changed. So we're getting into that part of the week before the Bronco chase. This is when people are wondering, doesn't add up with OJ. Right, he flies off to Chicago, comes back. He's got the cut on his finger. Slowly, you get the Louis Vuitton bag with Robert Kardashian. I think people with half a brain were starting to think, who else could have done this? Maybe, right? A lot of these things weren't starting to add up, and really, it was shock for a lot of people to think that O.J. Simpson could actually be a suspect. The reality of that was probably starting to sink in for everybody. It seems surreal, but I mean. This is when your life officially changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody was thinking that same thing. And like I said, my first thoughts were the cops came to my door. Detectives did the plane crash. So I thought there was nothing. I didn't know there was a murder yet. That's one thing. The other thing was, well, this is impossible. Most people thought because he was in Chicago at the time. That's where we start finding out what the timeline, how important it is. Yeah. So as you know, we've done the episodes on timeline, but it made me think, wait a minute, it is possible.
The reason you're involved in this is because you were friends with Nicole. Right. So not only is the knock on the door, you meeting with the 4 detectives, all that stuff that we've covered in other shows, but your life is spinning out of control because, holy crap, this is chaos, right? Everybody's talking about it around the world, but your friend's dead, right? And that's a lot to process. That had to be just like emotionally just so intense, kind of grieving about that and knowing how horrible it was. And then your life, what's next with me? Do they think I'm involved in this somehow?
Well, you're right with that. But I think part of it was thinking about my relationship also was close to the kids and thinking that they were in the house at the time this happened and they don't have a mom anymore. Mom is not going to see them get married, go to college, go to graduations. That was this most sickening feeling. And the kids, of how they are going to deal with this in life. And it's true. And at that time, the beginning, I didn't know what was going to happen. But yeah, Nicole, 100% definitely a friend. And devastating of how it all happened.
You were close with the kids. Yeah. I know how close you were. That's why you would go over to the Kardashians' house. Nicole and Chris were best friends, right? And you see the Kardashian kids. Kids loved you. I know Sydney and Justin probably loved you.
Well, as you know, Marcus Allen also wrote a letter for me to start I had a workshop for kids in the Valley. Bruce Jenner, Caitlin now, wrote a recommendation letter, which is just amazing. I think it's based because, first, Nicole was the one that set everything up. Shows you what kind of heart she had. She said, you got to write a recommendation for Kato. Wow. And so they wouldn't have done it unless they saw me how I was with kids. I was kind and making them laugh and number one, trustworthy.
What's crazy is that's probably the best thing if the kids could have been around you during that week, but I'm sure they went probably to Orange County to be with the Browns or whatever. But did you ever see him at all that week until the funeral or whatever? Okay. No. Yeah, unbelievable. It's minute by minute at this point with your life changing, and new information and stuff. So 2 things we want to cover right here and let you hear from Tom Lange as the investigation is really getting started, and maybe when OJ became a suspect, as well as Jim Moret, as far as how the media coverage really started forming at this point, and this became a literal circus right there on Rockingham and in front of Bundy. So let's hear from those two.
Well, in back of my mind, he's got to be a possible suspect. I mean, it's still bleeding. You go back. This was, when we interviewed him, it was about 13 hours after the murders that occurred. We feel that it probably went down about 12:35 or so. I'm sorry, 10:35 or so at night. And so this is early the next afternoon. Still bleeding. He doesn't even have a Band-Aid on it. You want to make a record of that on the tape that we're doing. So I mentioned something. I said, I see your fingers bleeding. Maybe we can get a Band-Aid for that or something. And he just said, no, that's okay. It's fine. So we're looking at each other, and, you know, maybe he's moved up a notch as a possible suspect, but you can't jump to conclusions here before you got the full story. And in that short interview, and it was a short interview for a reason, there were like a dozen inconsistencies in that short interview, 3 different stories during that 32 minutes about how he cut his finger. And so we have to look a little closer at that.
32 was his number. Are you just saying that because of that?
No, it's 30.
Oh, 30.
Might have been 33. I'm going to say 32 because I like that.
This is Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. He goes, we'll stop at 32. But here's immediately I become a detective when Tom talks. I'm thinking there's a cut in his finger. No one ever said if the gloves, did it have a slit in that finger? Did the glove actually have a cut hole in it?
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
There are 2 gloves, right hand, left hand.
Correct.
Okay, the left hand here. The right hand glove is at Rockingham. Left hand glove is at the scene. It did have some, but you can't line up the actual. I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
There were some cuts, but they wouldn't match up with the hand. That having been said, we believe that he lost the glove during a struggle. Mm-hmm. And the glove where it was found, the left glove, was found at the scene along with the other evidence right in the middle of the 2 bodies. So we think the glove obviously went off before the cut. Because the other glove, the Rockingham, of course, had blood of both victims and him. But this one did not. You couldn't say that cut went through the glove because the glove was off already.
And that's a great question because there had to be a struggle. I mean, Ron Goldman was a big guy who was trained in martial arts, right? I mean, he came about this and saw something happening, and obviously the aftermath of whatever happened to Nicole, and there obviously was a struggle, right? You can tell by the blood and everything.
Well, that and the wounds, the defensive wounds in both of the victims, and Ron Goldman's hands were all bruised up. So he went at it pretty good. But again, we've had reenactments of this, and the whole thing probably didn't last 20 seconds. But he was he had 4 fatal wounds. That's Goldman. And Nicole, of course, her throat was slashed, and she was nearly decapitated after she was struck in the rear of the head.
You know, you and I have discussed this too, Tom, off camera. The fact that OJ was a voyeur, right? Nicole used to live at Gretna Green, where Kato lived with her, and neighbors would report that OJ would show up and look in the window. He did that with a mask on, so you knew that about him. What's your hunch? Do you think that he went there that night to kill Nicole?
I don't know that he went there that particular night, but again, we knew that for months he'd been following her. There was a couple of people who said we also think that Nicole was aware of that she'd been followed when she was driving. This is a June night. She's got wearing leather gloves and a knit cap. It's not like it was 40 degrees out. It was a warm evening, fairly warm evening. Why would you be there to begin with, especially when you were leaving town that night? Now, that may have had something to do with it. Maybe he thought it through. I don't know. I think he was probably ticked off when Ron Goldman showed up. That's when he heard a witness who was across the street. He heard someone who he later said he thought it was OJ yelling, hey, 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 or something to that effect, and the clanging of a gate, which was where the struggle occurred. I can't say that he went there intentionally to do it because I don't think he expected Goldman to be there, but I think that might have teed him off.
Did you have any idea that day that your life was going to change to the level that it did? Because you logged so many hours on CNN, you became a household name, everybody knew who you were, and it kind of changed the trajectory of your career.
it changed my life in many ways, as that case changed many people's lives. I anchored all of the network's coverage. I think we logged over 1,000 hours on TV, and it was every day during that trial from say 9 to 4. And CNN and Court TV were the only networks going live gavel to gavel. And it was, I viewed it and still do, as a tremendous responsibility. I took the job very seriously. I would never tell anyone, even my own family, during that trial, how I felt it was going as far as O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence. Years later, obviously, all of that changes, but it changed my life completely.
It was great because we've had Tom Lange in the studio multiple times. On that show, we had him from his office where he lives. And remember, I'd been there the day before. I brought him a ring light, and I wanted to make sure the internet was like dialed in and ready for this thing, and it wasn't. And then he had a new computer. Thank God his grandson was there. His grandson saved the day and got him up. But even when Tom's just kicking it at his desk at his office, he just exudes authority and competence, and he's the man.
Well, I mentioned before in that segment that you're talking about a media circus, and you of all people did the sports. You did sports. You did news in Boston, Chicago, and Arizona. You want a media circus because you want ratings. So that's what I'll say about that. Yeah. But that's why the media circus it's everybody's fighting for this story. Mm-hmm. And as you know, with Jim Moret, it's just who is going to get the ratings. So
right. And the crazy thing is it delivered on every single element because every day there was something new. Every day. And then it culminated on the 17th. And that just led you into the grand jury, then the actual trial. But it was like you couldn't script this. You know, here we are in Hollywood where they don't make movies anymore, but here we are in Hollywood, and this thing is playing out so dramatically, so crazy, with so many compelling characters that if you tried to pitch this as a show or a docuseries, they would laugh your ass right out of the conference room at William Morris and CAA and wherever you're pitching it.
Well,
get out of here.
It was right in your living room, so people were loving it. They're going to watch something. They're going to watch this stuff unfold and play detectives in their own home.
Mm-hmm. All right, so each day, things getting more intense. The investigation, the news, the walls kind of coming in on OJ, reality sinking in for everybody. And let's hear from Tom Lange more about just the professionalism of how they were covering this. And they had their hands tied at times, but how they were trying to get to the bottom of this by doing great police work.
You have to handle this like anything else. You can't be influenced by the media, by the high profile nature of the case. If you do, you're going to lose perspective. Okay. In this particular case, the brass became involved early on because of all the publicity. Mm-hmm. They wanted Simpson to turn himself in. They wanted a perp walk and all this other stuff. It'd been a lot easier. Phil and I went out to his lawyer's house and arrested him there. No nonsense. Take him in, process and do what we have, but they have to have a show.
Right.
Well, as the investigator, you've got to keep things in perspective. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you treat this case like anything else. The most remarkable thing about this case was the fact that there was no evidence of a substantive nature that was exculpatory. Everything was inculpatory. It all pointed to one person as a suspect. That's very, very rare in any murder investigation. I would say less than 5% of the murder investigations have anything exculpatory. This one have something exculpatory. What the investigator needs to do is find out what that is and deal with it. It's only going to strengthen your investigation. This case had none of it. Everything went in one direction.
All right. All Tom, Phil, his partners, all of LAP, all they wanted to do is just be able to access the evidence and put together a case, hand it to the DA, and let them do it from there. That's their job, investigators. And it was getting difficult, and you could just sense that it was not going to be easy. Right.
He didn't look at it as celebrity at all. He just looked at it like, what's evidence? Yep. And that's what they did. He did his job 100%. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about this funeral.
Yeah, because that would be the next thing that would come that week.
I was going to mention the most bizarre thing, Tom, is that how would the reactions be with the families, I thought, because we knew Denise, I believe, screaming the phone, Tom Lange, he killed her. So I was waiting for an all-out brawl to happen. And it was somber, but I was waiting to see where is OJ going to sit? Where is he going to situate? And I was kind of staying back. And I wanted to make sure the parents of Nicole's would have Sydney and Justin, although I did have my moments with them, because it was the feeling of what is going to happen.
Kato, I've covered like big sporting events, right? A lot of Super Bowls, NBA finals. I was there. If you watched Last Dance, I was there for every minute of it from 95 to 98 with the Bulls. I was around Michael all the time, Dennis Rodman. When you walk into the United Center for the game one of the NBA, you can feel it. It's palpable. It's not a game in November. I mean, there's an energy that you can feel. I wasn't at the funeral. You were. Is there similarities there?
Well, the energy at a Bulls final is high, super energy, happy. This was somber. It was completely what is going to happen at this funeral, because people have already made up their mind about things. Where is it? What's going to happen? Is OJ, is he on Valium or whatever? Or is this? It was completely somber. People, I love the kids, but I'm so glad they were with Juditha and Lou and the sisters. But obviously I had my moments with them at the funeral. But I was waiting for something to just horribly go wrong, with a big fight to happen. And
it had to feel like a powder keg almost, right?
Exactly.
Like just intense. Did you go with anyone, or did you go by yourself?
I went by myself.
Okay.
Which was the best move. I just wanted, it was timed by myself, of thoughts of what is going to happen.
Okay, it's awesome to get your perspective. The other person that we've already introduced you to is Keith Zlomsowitch, who was close friends with Nicole, dated for a while, and pissed off, and knew in the back of his mind what happened. And he was at that funeral, and we asked him specifically about the tension with him and OJ there at Nicole's funeral.
It was tough. I was a pallbearer, so I was right there. I was right in the middle. And when OJ got out of his car with the kids, Cindy and Justin, who, I skied with and rode bikes with, and birthday parties at Magic Mountain for Justin, and we did all this stuff together. So I was as close to the kids, hanging out as anyone. But when he got out of the car at the funeral, and he came over and he basically hugged and kissed every pallbearer except me. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me. I knew when I heard about Nicole's murder, I knew instantly it was him. But imagine being me, standing 2 feet away from the woman you were madly in love with, and knowing the guy that did it is 3 feet away from you on the other side, and free, and walking around. I mean, he didn't get arrested until days after the funeral. If you remember, the Bronco chase was several days after the funeral. So he wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. So, that was just a reaffirmation of, yeah, I know you did it. So.
Right. Like I mentioned, somber. It was just this somber feeling of, and a fist fight breaking out, whatever, wouldn't have been unusual, but it didn't happen. But it became more and more bizarre. Every day, something else would happen and become bizarre. Who would have thought that 95 million or more people would watch a Bronco chase?
Yep. And that was, you couldn't predict that. OJ became a suspect on the 16th or 17th.
Right. I tie that in because OJ said he wanted to go to the cemetery to visit the site. So it's right after the funeral. He wants to go and visit the site of Nicole. So it's all tied in. And then this happens with the Bronco, the chase being 10 miles an hour.
Incredible. Okay, so that takes us to June 17th.
Right.
One of the, so many things going on in the world with the World Cup. The New York Rangers had their celebration for winning the Stanley Cup. There's so much stuff going on that day. And it started.
Nixon and Houston also playing the playoffs.
The NBA Finals.
Yeah, you had everything was going on.
Yeah, okay, so it started at another place that we were at. So we'll show you, and we'll cover this with some B-roll of it. Robert Kardashian's house, right in Studio City or the Valley, wherever it was. Yeah, just in the Valley, and the rant or the suicide note. It all started there. OJ was supposed to turn himself in. He became a fugitive.
The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson.
He goes with what Kato just mentioned to the grave site of Nicole with AC Cowlings in AC Cowlings Bronco. And that's when it started. That's when he was picked up. We had Zoe Tur, the helicopter pilot that followed him and owned the story for about 20 minutes. And one of the craziest parts of that, though, was Conan Nolan of NBC4.
There's nothing that we didn't catch on our segments. We've got the Zoe Tur, we've got Conan Nolan, which the most incredible story of, once again, Tom, we've been talking about this. who would believe that that was going to happen? Not in a NBC van.
I know. Exactly. And what Kato's referring to is Conan Nolan was a reporter for NBC4 in Los Angeles. He's still there.
Yeah.
He's a great reporter and a great guy.
What a guy.
And every newsroom in town's going absolutely bonkers. Their scanners are going crazy. Everybody wants to get a jump on this story. There's 7 stations that do news at this time, in the LA Times, and, all the networks were here. Someone had to get an advantage, and they go for it. They jump into what was the vehicle they jumped into?
I think it was a carpenter van.
Carpenter
it was a
van,
carpenter
unmarked.
plumber. It was a working, like a van that was not a broadcast NBC van. It was something that was found available.
Yep. So he and a photographer get into
Which worked, by the way, to his advantage.
Totally.
Because AC doesn't know, they got reporters in front that are filming. And so they're filming, and they're in a unmarked van.
So Conan Nolan and his photographer are going south on the 405. AC and OJ are coming north on the 405. He gets off on an exit, and he becomes a news vehicle in front of the Bronco. Here's Conan.
We were in a small van, unmarked. We started heading down the freeway. A guy named Dana Roker was a photographer driving. He now works for NBC Dateline and has been a network photographer for years. And once we realized that OJ's headed up the freeway towards us, we decided, well, wait, we got off and then got back on going the other way, pulled to the side, changed places so I would drive. He would have the camera in the passenger seat.
You're driving the van.
I'm driving the van. I'm just looking in the rearview mirror waiting for him, and there he is in this phalanx of CHPs, lights and sirens, and LAPD, Orange County Sheriff. So I just pulled up in front of him and thinking, okay, this is, we'll give it a shot. But it was a moment like something, again, it's a cliche. Oh, it's like a movie. No scriptwriter would come up with this.
No.
And your point that the number of people that made signs as we're driving with him behind us, and I'm looking at the overpass and seeing people lined up with, go OJ, go. I said, how did they have time to make that sign? And that gives you an idea as to the mentality of the moment and the fact that the freeways sort of came to a stop.
Yeah, a lot of people here, it's their first instinct. Hey, there's going to be cameras. There's going to be attention. Call TMZ. Do this. People think differently here in LA because our news is just different and the whole culture out here is different. Okay, so Zoe Tur said that she picked him up at the gravesite, I think roughly in Laguna Beach, and then she owned that story basically from where the 5 and the 405 merged. Where were you? So you got off the freeway, and did you wait? Or did you cease the commotion?
No.
Okay.
So we realized, at some point they're going to stop the off-ramps. They're going to block the off-ramps. So we got off before that happens and then got back on going in the opposite direction, pulled to the side, waited for them, and then pulled in front. So at that point, I needed to go on TV. We couldn't phone because of the cell phones. They were triangulated his whereabouts using them, so you couldn't get through on the phone. The desk had to call us. So I went on the two-way radio. We're in front of OJ. They call us. Went on TV, and the whole time I'm thinking I can only see AC, and I'm wondering why don't I see two people? And that's when they say on television, Paul Moyer, OJ's got a gun to his head and he's in the back seat. My biggest worry was that because we had heard the memo or the suicide note, that he blamed the media in the suicide note, and that Robert Kardashian had read. And I thought, okay, we don't want to kill him. If he sees our camera, that might be his moment to take his own life. I don't want that on me. So the idea was to stay in front as long as we could, but not be part of the story.
But then again, they don't even know you're not in a news van.
Exactly.
They're thinking possibly this person's just a guy that off the street said, "Oh, we're going to film OJ. We found him." They don't know it's Conan Nolan.
They don't
NBC
know. And we're shooting there's a rear view mirror shot that the photographer gets. There's all sorts of commotion on the freeway. People are trying to pull up next to him. Cars are colliding. I'm seeing accidents on the opposite lane, opposite traffic. People had stopped and were on the divider to watch it. And then, of course, the overpass shots. That was pretty stunning.
I mean, what else can you do in your career that would top that? Nothing. And a lot of times luck is involved, chance, just being in the right place at the right time, as opposed to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you get a break like that as a reporter sometimes. And Zoe Tur, you got to trust your hunches. You got to have some sources that can maybe give you some leads so you know where to go. But that's just chilling to think that he's in front of that.
Yeah, it's everything is happening, and it's a slow Bronco chase. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And
where were you watching it? You said you were at a buddy's house or something,
I was at
right?
my buddy's house. We were actually watching basketball, and then I was watching at a buddy's house, 3 other guys, and we're all watching this. And so I was aware of the chase going on. Towards the end of it, people were going, well, who's the other guy running out? And I knew it was Jason, the son, running to OJ's, and they said it's most dangerous because there's a gun in the car. And well, we talked about all that. SWAT members are up in the trees at OJ's house at Rockingham, shoot to kill. But the odds again, Tom, everything is the odds of, and I say this because there's a phone call involved, and not everybody has cell phones in '94. No, not everybody's got, and receptions would drop out. It's still everything kind of worked out.
Yeah, some crazy things about this Bronco chase are this is Friday. This is a Friday night in LA. That's a lot of traffic, and they must have been clearing the road in front because they had pretty much smooth. They were going slow, but they had a free open freeway to travel. Just when you think this thing couldn't get any more surreal or bizarre, like you could not leave your TV, especially when the phone call that you mentioned, it's Tom Lange in the middle of this investigation. He's at Parker Center, and they know he's got a gun, and they think they want to keep him from killing himself.
Right. And Patty Fairbanks, who I remember because that's the person I check in with, worked at the DA's office, and she was at one of the secretaries there. She goes, Tom, I've got OJ's number. And they got the number. Like, is he going to pick up the phone during this chase? It works out that he picks up the phone. I'll let Tom tell him.
Yeah, so talk about balls, man. Tom Lange picks up the phone, a phone that you probably had to punch the numbers on it, right? A landline. No idea if there would be an answer. Tom Lange makes a call that almost 100 million people listen to. Here is Tom describing it.
I made the decision that I'm going to try to phone him because I knew that he had a mobile phone. I got a hold of Patty Jo Fairbanks at the DA's office, and we were talking, and she said she just happens to have his phone number. And I said, well, it probably means nothing. He's not going to pick up. Just give it to me. We'll try something. We've got to do something. So she gave me the number, and I dialed the phone, and there's no way, dialed, by the way, we used to dial, and there's no way he's going to pick up. Well, it rang twice, and he picked up. And it kind of caught me off guard. And I said, initially, OJ, this is Tom Lange. Need to talk to you. And we started to talk. And he was obviously under the influence of something, or very tired, or probably both. And at that moment, when I first talked to him, I didn't realize he had a gun. So I'm just trying to talk to him because in the back of my mind, I thought that, well, what is he going to do? It could be anything. Maybe he doesn't know what he's going to do. So I just started to talk to him about his kids, about this will all be over soon. Don't worry about it. Things have a tendency to work themselves out. Right now, you need to turn yourself in, all this type of stuff. And then all of a sudden, somebody kind of just whispered at me and said, he's got a gun. One of the sheriffs saw a gun. And so I'm thinking, well, now it's getting a little more complicated. Yeah, right. And then they said, oh, by the way, he's waving it around. So now I'm thinking, well, is he going to shoot himself, shoot AC, shoot back at the cops chasing him? I didn't know. So that was my only thought here.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that was watching that was thinking, could he kill himself right here on television? And the answer is no, because he's such a sociopath and a narcissist. He wouldn't go out that way. Right. Little did he know he'd beat the charges. But it could have happened. And the suspense was killing everybody. Man.
Right. And Tom Lange, by the way, is not the only one they called. Vince Evans, quarterback of the Raiders at the time. All friends of OJ's are calling this not to do it. And it became such a spectacle, like a sports, like OJ running for the Buffalo Bills running, that Al Michaels took over like a play-by-play for ABC. And it was surreal.
Yeah, because Peter Jennings is the anchor for ABC at the time. They got Al Michaels. Al Michaels was on there right as they were pulling up into Rockingham, because Al Michaels is a member of Bel Air Country Club, which is right over there, literally right over there.
Right, and he knew OJ.
And it was almost like play-by-play. It was incredible. So it's just a totally surreal, everything about it. And there was another thing going on that day, the NBA Finals. Right. Houston Rockets versus the New York Knicks. And
that was the last time the Knicks had been in it from this,
yes,
but not in the finals.
Right. So they were in the NBA finals playing Hakeem Olajuwon, and Jim Moret discusses about just what NBC had to do and the media had to do, because you got, a lot of NBA fans and sports fans that would normally be watching this, but how do you handle that? You do it with a split screen. Well, you know what? That finals was kind of boring anyway. After Michael left the Bulls, I mean, it was like all this defense and physical play. But I mean, you got New York, the biggest market in the country as well, that, you're losing a lot of viewers there because they're flipping over or watching it somewhere else. So it's absolutely crazy. And then it just starts wrapping up. We're right off Sunset here at our studio. Zeus's studio here is literally right off Sunset Boulevard. And that's where they came off the 405 and then came over into, go past Bel Air and just boom, right up there into, you go the opposite way into Rockingham. Right. So, God, it was coming to this epic conclusion. It still wasn't done because once they weaved their way and, everybody's running there and it was chaos and snipers in the trees. And
what's so confusing, Tom, is there's been so many shows about this that the mind goes, was that part of the Ryan Murphy show? Was that part of the real was that a documentary on Netflix? So you start going, what is... All I know is that Tom Lange, that's him on the phone. All I know is I did see Jason run to the car. All I know is that was the entrance where OJ would go with his car, how they pulled the Bronco in. So I knew watching it. So, but the confusing thing is it's been done where people are, different shows have done so much on this.
There's a lot of people that, have alternative theories, and a lot of them involve Jason. And the only thing I'll say is I don't believe OJ wouldn't have somehow ratted somebody out. He's
not Jason. It's OJ.
I agree.
Yeah.
But the only thing that is a little weird, and I'd love an answer for, is why was he so intense running to that Bronco? What were you going to do? Pull him out? I mean, it was a very stressful moment.
I think it's easy. I think it's his dad. And he says, Dad, what are you doing? Okay. He's so worried. And that's it. He's running out there. He loves his dad. And that's why he's running out there. Like, what are you doing, Dad? You got a gun? So he's watching it like we're watching on TV. And it's probably in his body is going, I got to get my dad. True. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, but you also consider, they were waiting at Rockingham for a while. Yeah. And the police and everybody was telling him, here's what's going to happen when the car pulls up. Nobody go to the car. I'm sure they were told nobody go to the car.
I'm sure his mind was made up no matter. I'm running to my dad. But
interesting. And they said if OJ had walked out and had the gun, the snipers would have shot him.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have, the lives would be in danger at that point. You just didn't know what he's going to do next.
Yeah, and that's Tom Lange and everybody else made a don't take the gun out. And he had a picture frame.
Yeah, and then the other crazy thing is Kurt Russell was in the house. The actor Kurt Russell. I just find that little bit of trivia so crazy.
Kurt Russell was at OJ's house.
Yes, he was at Rockingham because he lived in the area, and I've heard interviews with him. I want to get him on the show and have him talk about this because.
And I played baseball, Kurt, back in the league. My goal was to become a pro player. Kurt Russell was also going to become a major league player.
Yeah, and he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Big role in that. But he was in the house. I'll try to get him on the show just to talk about that because I find that fascinating. Okay, so now let's get to the kind of the end here and what's going to happen when he pulls up, gets to the door. Let's hear from Tom Lange, who was heavily involved in all of this action. Here's Tom talking about the scene. You knew the circus was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then now, like a great movie, how is this thing going to end? Is he going to kill himself? How does it end? You figure it out. He's going to his house on Rockingham. Talk to us about the snipers that were there and the police presence and what the snipers are trained to do, because those guys are ready for action. What would it have taken for them to do something?
Okay, all of a sudden it's dark and we see the parade coming up Rockingham, and I'm thinking to myself, it's showtime. We're going to know in about 2 minutes what's going to happen. So I continued. In fact, I pressed it about the gun. Do not get out of the car with the gun. Leave the gun. Don't do anything. Just step out, leave the gun in the car. Don't do this type of thing. So they pull in the driveway. And of course, we knew that SWAT was there. SWAT, they train as much as anybody, and they knew exactly after about 2 minutes of looking at the layout at Rockingham where they would set a sniper. Obviously, the driveway was covered, and they were concealed. No one could actually see them. I guess if you're looking at the house from the outside from Rockingham, but they were set up around the driveway because it was assumed at the time that that's where he would pull in. The gate was open because normally it's closed, but they had the gate open. We knew there were people there waiting for him, so they assumed it would be the Rockingham entrance. They also had the street covered. So the only thing now we have, like I said at showtime, is do not get out of the car with a gun in your hand. They would have no other choice. So he pulls in, and I'm talking to him. He's obviously, at this point, he didn't hang up, but the phone is on the floorboard, and I'm still talking, but he is not talking to me now. He's being yelled at by Jason, his son. And so they start going back and forth, and then somebody goes out and grabs Jason, and they're yelling back and forth. He's not getting out of the car, and so this exacerbates everything in my mind. What is he going to do? Maybe he didn't know again what he was going to do. This goes on for several minutes until finally he gets out of the car, and thank God he leaves the gun behind. And then we saw what happened after that. A couple of officers from SWAT grabbed him as he came out. But for that few minutes, nobody knew what was going to happen. And to this day, I obviously don't know what was going through his mind. I don't think he knew what to do at that point. Because if you're home after this long drive down south, why not just get out of your car, turn yourself in? But for some reason, he wasn't getting out right away. That caused a lot of problems in my mind.
Yeah. Hey, Kato, what do you think OJ was thinking when he was in that car? Because that's another 2 hours or so. Do you think, how do I make this the most dramatic I can? How do I become a hero? How do I make myself sympathetic? What do you think he was thinking?
I honestly, what I had said before, I think that he was in a total depression until he saw the fans on the 405. And I thought even at that moment, I think he tried to play it out a little bit longer. He knew there were cameras around. And I think that was his change of heart, seeing his ego being stroked. And he knew he was going to be okay. And that's what my opinion was of how he's going to go out there. Never he was going to shoot himself. Yeah. He loved himself way too much. Mm-hmm. And he knew somehow with his dream team that he was eventually get, he was going to pull through.
Jim, you can look at this from so many angles as a newsman, entertainment reporter, attorney. You knew cops. There's a thing called death by suicide, right? Or a cop suicide. He could have walked out and boom, it's over. Those snipers would have taken him out. What do you think he was thinking? Do you think all that stuff was going through his mind, or do you think he was under the influence, or have you formed an opinion on that?
I think he was depressed. I think Kato's right. I think he had gone down to the gravesite, and I think that I don't know that he knew what he was going to do. I don't think it was a great plan to make himself sympathetic for a potential jury. I don't think he was thinking that far ahead. I think that I think he was really mired in depression at that point, and I think that Detective Lange's call may have kept him alive, to be honest with you, because he was a calming influence, and the goal was really to get him talking and stay on that line and not do anything crazy.
Well, and there you have it. The craziest week, one of the craziest weeks, especially when it comes to news coverage, pop culture, how it changes, just the social impact on the United States, news coverage, true crime, reality TV.
Yeah. I said on one of my posts on Instagram, Tom, that I said, we're going to cover 30 years in 60 minutes. And we could go on and on for more than that. But obviously October 95 is when the jury made the decision, which is 30 years. And it's just, our show brings everything back to me. And it does feel like a week ago, the way we do the seeing everybody of seeing Alan Park, seeing Jill Shively, who I met on our show. I never met during the trial because she wasn't a witness. But Alan, having Tom Lange become obviously part of our show, part of our life.
Right. Skip Junis,
and just
Zoe Tur, all of them,
It's really amazing. Yeah. And I think our shows are really,
Yeah.
I'm on the show. And it just sounds like
and you lived it, and you're on the show.
And it's just
sounds like you're
so
a viewer.
compelling watching this stuff.
Yeah. Go back to watch last week's episode where Kato was commenting and I was running him through his testimony during the trial. This is a great episode. And the thing about this is people all over the world watch this coverage, right? Of the O.J. Simpson. This isn't just a local story here in LA. It's national and it's worldwide. And the audience for they can't get enough of this type of content when it deals
worldwide.
with the O.J. scandal.
You bring up worldwide. I'll tell you how worldwide it is. From our show, 1 Degree of Scandalous, German TV has been watching. RTL, LTL, Luxembourg, LRT, Luxembourg Radio and Television, the biggest broadcasting out there, who came out to see me to do a kind of what we're doing. And it's because they watch the show and they love. So it is worldwide.
Yep. And we'll have more coverage of the OJ saga throughout the year because we got the rest of the trial and then the verdict in October. So we'll have some big stuff. And by the way, Marsha Clark is going to be at CrimeCon in Denver.
September.
And maybe we'll end up out there. And Marsha, would you like to talk to us? Would you like to share a few things? So
I love it.
By the way, I tried to get Chris Darden. $100,000, he said. $100,000. Donate. Anyone, if you want to donate 12 cents, a dime, a penny, whatever, let's
are you
get
sure
that.
I heard it was 100 pesos. We'll see what we can do.
You talk to him. You do.
Okay.
Zeus, maybe you get involved in this thing too. All right. Okay. That was enjoyable going down memory lane. I hope everybody else enjoyed it too. And Zeus, what'd you think, man? You weren't even born. No, you were, but you were just a little baby, young child.
He's living it through our show.
I'm going to have a quiz for you. See what you're learning on this show. It's mesmerizing. Just say it's mesmerizing. You love it, don't you? Mesmerizing. In the mic? Mesmerizing. Good job, Zeus.
Mesmerizing.
Love it.
All right. Okay. 4, the one and only K-Train, Kato Kaelin, Zeus back there. I'm Tom Zenner. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you very, very soon.